And okay, so step one, Brut Verité from Charpentier with the Leonora. Erin, how did you do it?
So when we first tasted the Brut Verité, we immediately thought of a goat cheese. The sort of creaminess and tanginess that we find across lightly aged goat's milk cheeses seemed like it would be a good place to start from. We landed on the Leonora specifically, so Leonora being a relatively new production from Castilla y León in Spain. The aging quality of that, the rind characteristics, all of that led to a very creamy, dense, tangy, little bit kind of like preserved citrus forward character that gave it a really nice complexity and balance. So that Chardonnay-driven Brut Verité, the chalk and salinity and those two together, I think made a really solid match together.
What made you think about goat cheese? I heard you say creaminess, but then I also heard you say tart. What was in tasting the wine? What jumped to go that direction?
I think when we think about traditional approaches to pairing, if we're going to, I think tartness or tanginess might be two words to describe what we would talk about as acidity in wine, but it is essentially the same characteristic or sensation, I think, that we're coming at. So I think we were looking to find something that maybe matched on that level, but then could also balance with the creamy textures of that Brut Verité. So those younger goat's milk cheeses will tend to just have a little bit more moisture, which will give it a creamier feel on the palate. But then it also has some of that citrus and that acid that we wanted to kind of match and play on the characteristics of that Brut Verité.
Stephanie, when you hear that and you think about the Brut Verité, can you walk us through the aspect of the wine and what where that makes sense to you and what you tasted?
Yeah, actually, I found in the description what the Brut Verité can offer, especially on the creamy bubbles that you have in the middle palate of the Brut Verité. The purity and the elegance of the Brut Verité is a great match to what the creaminess of the cheese bring, to the pairing. And especially the mineral limestone and the silex tone of this blend are really two interesting pairing with the goat cheese. Both have their delicate character and they really do complement very well each other, I thought.
And I think too, in terms of goat cheese as a category and where we went there, I think that I stand by that. And I think though that Leonora offered something a little bit more special than say a younger a very fresh goat's milk cheese without much age on them. Goat's milk cheeses have a little bit more cakey, crumbly texture that Leonora tends to get between 4 and 5 weeks of aging before it's sent to us. And that additional time aging just concentrates, I think, a little bit more of the textures as well. So it has an additional creamy kind of dense mouth coating characteristic that I thought, as compared to some of the younger goat milk cheeses that we tasted, matched it really nicely.
Yeah. And also in the Brut Verité, the fact that the Chardonnay is supported by 15% Pinot Meunier and the 15% Pinot Noir, gives the structure and the help to the Chardonnay to be put forward and to be also giving a good answer to a cheese with character. I found the cheese, this cheese to have a particular character, sweet but strong, soft but strong, I should say.
One piece that I thought really stood out here and was consistent throughout the tasting is how well you paired the specific rinds and the exterior of the cheeses with the wines. And one of the pieces that throughout the course of it, the rinds tended to be something that had tanginess, maybe a touch of bitterness. And I felt like with this and with other wines along the way, that it highlighted the Pinot Meunier in a way that I did not see And I really thought that was like a gift of insight because you taste champagnes and it's really hard to isolate things. But when you, with the Leonora and then later with some of the other wines that we tasted, it was almost as if that sort of what I would describe as grapefruit or as sort of angular citrus note of Pinot Meunier came out. And so now I understand Pinot Meunier better. So I thought that was awesome. And I had it again last night with my wife, and it was just equally good for the little combination.
Yeah, and it's actually meeting what Jean-Marc Charpentier liked to say, that and not only Jean-Marc, but in the region, that the Chardonnay from Vallée de la Marne, Pinot means like it tends to have some Pinot Meunier characteristic.
So maybe I'm tasting a little bit of Chardonnay from the Marne as much as
absolutely. I think, yeah, that's the power of the Chardonnay from this region. Yeah.
Cool. Tell us, before we jump, tell us the pairing that Xavier Touré did, and you tasted it, and how is it different? Where did he go?
Oh, he went to actually a cow cheese, which is Cantal. Cantal is a pressed dough from Auvergne, center France. So Cantal entre deux, so it's not totally ripened, so it has a kind of creaminess and freshness, but it is a strong dough cheese. The pairing were totally different than the goat cheese, but both had the interest of raising from the wine, the different character we just mentioned, and the fact that each of the varietal within the blend, had something to say and had a good reason to be a part of the Brut Verité champagne. So the association was different, but pretty much the same in terms of how does one is giving an answer to the other. So I found it kind of a good balance.
I think
Cool.
that is I tried very hard actually not to look at the pairings beforehand, because I didn't want that to inform how I or the team thought about it. So I actually didn't know that. And I think that while those two cheeses, the Leonora and the Cantal, are two very different cheeses, one different milk types, different regions. Cantal entre deux is a giant wheel, where Leonora it's a smaller brick. I think there are some parallels that I've experienced in that cheese between the Leonora, or some parallels between that cheese and the Leonora, kind of like a cultured yogurt kind of tanginess that I often find in that Cantal. I think that some of that echoes in the Leonora as well. So that would have been a really interesting side by side to see.
The milky part of the cheese, actually.
Yeah,
that expressed with fresh cheese. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.